So we wanted to talk about functions. R has a large collection of functions built into the system. So we'll try using the sequence command. So it goes seq and then parentheses. So if we look it up, we can say the sequence command generates a regular sequence in a standard generic value. Once we do that, a pop-up shows you the possible completions. So now we can go ahead and we'll use that command to write use that function to see what the output is. So a sequence creates a sequence of numbers that fill in the blanks. So here's your sequence 1 through 10, and this will return a array that has the numbers 1 through 10. So we can do a hello world. Let's try a basic hello world. So X, and then we want to say hello world. And the quotation marks and parentheses must always come in a pair. So RStudio automatically created the second set of quotation marks in my hello world statement. So I haven't even, but when I do set the second quotation mark, it just overwrites it right away. So that's another functionality that R automatically has built in that helps you with functions and variables. We hit enter, we can recall X, and that will be hello world. So that's your introduction to using functions. So now we're going to use data transformation with dplyr, or dplyr, which is a part of the library. Visualization is an important tool for insight generation, but it is often rare that you get data in exactly the right form you need. Often you'll need to create some new variables or summaries, or maybe you just want to rename the variables or reorder the observations in order to make the data a little easier to work with. You'll learn how to do all this in this section, which will teach you how to transform your data using dplyr package and a new data set of flights department, New York City in 2013. So we've already installed the library above, which is called the tidyverse library. We also want to make sure that we call on the NYC Flights 13 dataset. So let's go ahead and type that in, NYC Flights. Hit enter. NYC Flights, there's no package called NYC Flights because there's no package called NYC Flights. We have NYC Flights 13. That's the package we installed. So now we've called that dataset. Be careful and take notes of conflict messages that printed when you load the tidyverse. So right now if we go ahead and we load tidyverse, we've already loaded it earlier, but we can load it again. And all this does, it tells you that dplyr overwrites some functions in base R, which you can see up here. Conflict, so dp filter is overwritten by that, and those are the conflicts when you load your tidyverse package. So let's explore our NYC Flights dataset. To do that, all we do is type in NYC Flights 13 flights. The data frame contains all 336,766 flights that departed from New York City in 2013. The data comes from the U.S. Bureau of Transportation and Statistics. You might notice that this data frame prints a little differently from the other data frames you might have used in the past. It only shows the first few rows and the columns that fit on the screen. To see the whole data set, you can run view flights, which will open the data set in RStudio Viewer. So let's take a look at that. So we can come in here and type in view flights. What happened? Is view a function? All right, so what this is doing is opening the entire data set in the viewer. So it says we're missing the X11 library. So we want to install Xquartz. So we can go ahead and do that right now. Install packages Xquartz. Xquartz was not found. Well, we'll come back to that one in the next video, but we'll continue with this video. We're exploring the flights dataset. You might notice that row 3 or 4 letter abbreviations under the column name. This describes the variable of each data. So you can see int is an integer, integer, a double, which is a type of data, integer, double, character, integer, character, character, character. So those highlight all the different different data types. And you can see here we have date, time. And these are the most common types of data. In this section, you're going to learn how to learn the 5 key dplyr functions, dplyr functions that allow you to solve the vast majority of your data manipulation. We can filter, arrange, select, mutate, and summarize. These can all be used in conjunction with group by, which changes the scope of each function from operating on the entire data set to operating on it group by group. These 6 functions provide the verbs for language of data manipulation. All verbs work similarly. The first argument is the data frame. The subsequent argument will describe what to do with the data frame using the variable names, and the result is a new data frame. Together, these properties make it easy to chain together multiple simple steps to achieve a complex result. Let's dive in and see how these verbs work. So let's start with filter. Filter allows you to subset the observations based on their values. The first argument is the name of the data frame. The second and subsequent arguments are the expressions that filter the data frame. So let's see, for example, we can select all flights on January 1st. So let's go ahead and type in filter. Flights month equals 1, and then day equals 1. Hit enter. Month is not an object name, month is. And you can see this returns 832 rows which are all the flights that departed on January 1st. We can also set this result set to we can set it to Jan 1 and then type in the alt minus, and now you have so we don't want, oh, that's not right. This is going to create an error. So we want Jan 1 to be a filter of that data set. Filter. So this gives you every flight that departed on January 1st, and we can call it by just using Jan 1. So R either prints out the results or saves them to a variable. So right here we saved the Jan 1 as a variable. We can also ask R to do both. If we want to save it as a variable and print it out, let's try Jan 25. So now we've set Jan 25 as a filter. I forgot to do that. 30th, we need a second set of parentheses. So if you put parentheses around the entire line, this will save it as a variable and print it out. So if we call Jan 30th, you can see it was saved as a variable and it brings it in. So next we're going to look at comparisons, logic operators, but first go ahead and use what you learned in the filter function and see if you can apply it to the data set available.